Elena Harper thought she had built a safe, stable life for her son Alex, but that illusion shattered the moment she discovered the lengths Liam Dawson was willing to go to keep his control. What began as a decision to let Eric Montgomery, Alex's biological father, re-enter their lives spiraled into a deadly confrontation, one that left Liam dead, Elena on trial, and Alex caught in the crossfire. In a tragic tale of love, betrayal, and survival, the line between victim and perpetrator blurred, leaving only one question: how far would you go to protect the ones you love? Elena Harper appeared to have a life that many envied. At 32, she lived in a charming townhouse in the peaceful suburban neighborhood of Greenhaven. The community was close-knit, filled with the laughter of children playing in the streets and the comforting hum of normalcy. Elena had built a thriving career as a freelance graphic designer, allowing her the flexibility to balance work with raising her 5-year-old son Alex. To everyone who knew her, Elena was a picture of resilience and grace, a woman who had faced challenges and come out stronger. Her son Alex was the light of her life. Energetic and curious, he was a constant source of joy and purpose for Elena. For the first 3 years of his life, she had been his sole caregiver, navigating the trials of single motherhood with determination. Though the circumstances surrounding Alex's birth were complicated, Elena had never regretted her decision to raise him on her own. 2 years ago, Liam Dawson entered their lives. Charismatic, confident, and seemingly perfect, Liam had swept Elena off her feet. A successful real estate agent, he brought stability and a sense of partnership that Elena had been longing for. He quickly bonded with Alex, stepping into the role of father figure with ease. From the outside, their lives seemed idyllic, a happy family in a cozy home, complete with weekend barbecues and family outings. But behind the smiles and the perfectly curated social media posts, cracks in the foundation of their relationship were beginning to show. While Liam outwardly embraced Alex, there was an undercurrent of tension whenever the subject of Alex's biological father, Eric Montgomery, came up. Eric had disappeared from their lives shortly after Alex was born, leaving Elena to pick up the pieces. Liam's insistence on erasing any trace of Eric from their lives was something Elena found unsettling, but she often brushed it aside to maintain the peace. Greenhaven was a quiet, predictable place, the kind of suburb where everyone knew their neighbors and gossip traveled quickly. Elena's townhouse was surrounded by neatly trimmed lawns, white picket fences, and streets lined with maple trees. It was a haven of normalcy, but it also held a stifling sense of scrutiny. People in Greenhaven were friendly but watchful, and Elena often felt the weight of their judgment. Life in Greenhaven moved forward in predictable rhythms. Alex attended preschool, Elena worked on her design projects, and Liam charmed his way through real estate deals. But beneath the surface, Elena was grappling with a growing sense of unease. She had always planned to tell Alex the truth about his biological father when he was older, but as Alex grew more curious, those plans felt increasingly inadequate. One afternoon, as Elena was organizing old paperwork, she stumbled upon a letter tucked into the corner of a drawer. Her heart stopped as she realized it was from Eric. The letter, written shortly after Alex's birth, was filled with regret and a desire to someday reconnect with his son. Reading Eric's words brought back a flood of emotions: hurt, anger, and a faint glimmer of hope. Elena knew this letter was a crossroads. Reaching out to Eric would upend the fragile balance of her life with Liam, but ignoring it felt like a betrayal to herself and Alex. As she folded the letter back into its envelope, she couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery was the beginning of something much larger, something that would force her to confront the carefully constructed reality she had built in Greenhaven. Elena's decision to reach out to Eric Montgomery marked the beginning of a series of choices that would forever alter her life. After finding his letter buried in a drawer, she couldn't shake the feeling that her son Alex deserved to know the man who had brought him into this world. For years, she had told herself that Eric's absence was for the best, a painful chapter better left closed. but holding the letter in her hands, reading his words of regret and longing, made her question that belief. She wrestled with the idea for days, her mind a storm of conflicting emotions. She didn't know what kind of man Eric had become or if he could be trusted around Alex. But she also couldn't ignore the possibility that he had changed, that he could offer Alex something no one else could. With these thoughts weighing on her, she drafted a cautious message and sent it to the email address Eric had included in the letter. To her surprise, Eric responded quickly. His message was brief but heartfelt, expressing his gratitude for the opportunity to reconnect. He suggested a meeting at a quiet cafe, assuring her that he would respect any boundaries she set. Elena hesitated but ultimately agreed, choosing a location far from Greenhaven to avoid any prying eyes. When the day came, Elena was a bundle of nerves. She arrived early, her stomach in knots as she replayed every possible scenario in her head. When Eric walked in, she barely recognized him. The years had changed him. His once carefree demeanor had been replaced by a quieter, more introspective presence. They exchanged polite greetings, the air between them heavy with unspoken history. Their conversation was measured at first, each treading carefully as they caught up on the years that had passed. Eric spoke of the mistakes he had made and the reasons he had stayed away: fear, immaturity, and the misguided belief that Alex might be better off without him. He expressed deep regret and a sincere desire to be part of Alex's life, if only Elena would allow it. Hearing Eric's words stirred something in Elena. She had spent so long resenting him for his absence, but now, faced with his vulnerability, she found herself softening. She explained her concerns and fears, making it clear that her priority was Alex's well-being. Eric listened intently, his remorse evident in every word he spoke. They agreed to take things slowly, starting with a single meeting between Eric and Alex. Elena kept the encounter casual, arranging for them to meet at a park under the guise of a playdate. She watched from a distance as Eric introduced himself to Alex, his voice gentle and his movements tentative. To her surprise, Alex took to him quickly, their connection almost immediate. As Eric and Alex played together, Elena felt a mix of emotions: relief, hope, and an underlying sense of dread. She knew this decision would complicate her already fragile relationship with Liam. She hadn't told him about Eric's reappearance, knowing full well how he would react. Liam had always been possessive, his love for Alex tinged with an almost obsessive need to be the only father figure in his life. In the days that followed, Elena wrestled with how to break the news to Liam. She knew she couldn't keep Eric's involvement a secret forever, but she also feared the consequences of telling the truth. As she grappled with these decisions, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking a tightrope, one misstep away from a devastating fall. The fragile balance of her life was beginning to tilt, and she could only hope that she could catch herself before it was too late. Liam's behavior escalated quickly after discovering Elena's meeting with Eric. What had once been subtle displays of jealousy turned into overt acts of control and intimidation. He began insisting on knowing her every move, questioning even the smallest deviations from her daily routine. Elena felt as though she was living under constant surveillance. Her phone was no longer her own. Liam routinely went through her messages and call logs, searching for any signs of communication with Eric. At first, she tried to reason with him, but it became clear that his anger wasn't rooted in logic. He felt betrayed, not just by Elena's actions, but by the very existence of Eric. To Liam, Eric represented a challenge to the life he had built with Elena and Alex, a threat to his fragile sense of control. The situation in their home grew increasingly volatile, with Liam's temper flaring over the slightest provocation. Elena's once peaceful home became a place of fear and tension. Alex, too young to understand the complexities of the situation, sensed the change and began withdrawing. He would retreat to his room when the argument started, his small hands covering his ears to block out the shouting. Elena's heart broke for her son, knowing he was caught in the middle of a battle he didn't deserve. The pressure mounted when Eric began pressing for more time with Alex. He reached out to Elena, suggesting regular visits so he could build a relationship with his son. Eric's intentions seemed genuine, but his persistence only fueled Liam's anger. He viewed Eric's involvement as an intrusion, an attack on his role as Alex's father. One evening, while Alex was at a friend's house, Liam confronted Elena about Eric's request. His voice was calm, but his words carried an unmistakable threat. He accused her of undermining their family, of risking everything they had worked for. When Elena tried to defend her decision to let Eric meet Alex, Liam exploded, throwing a glass across the room and shattering it against the wall. That night, Elena realized just how dangerous Liam had become. His anger was no longer just emotional, it was physical, unpredictable, and escalating. She began to fear for her safety, and more importantly, for Alex's. The once charming man she had fallen in love with was now a stranger, someone she could no longer trust. Elena reached out to Eric, pleading with him to back off for Alex's sake. But Eric refused, insisting that he had a right to be in his son's life. His determination was unwavering, and while Elena understood his perspective, she also knew it was adding fuel to an already volatile situation. The breaking point came when Elena overheard Liam on a phone call. His voice was low, but his words sent chills down her spine. He spoke about getting rid of the problem, his tone cold and calculating. She didn't know if he was referring to Eric, herself, or both, but the implication was clear. Liam was willing to go to extreme lengths to maintain his control. Elena knew she had to act. The fear that had kept her paralyzed for so long now drove her to plan an escape. She began quietly making arrangements, ensuring Alex would be somewhere safe. But as she worked to protect her son, she underestimated just how far Liam was willing to go and how quickly the situation would spiral beyond her control. The night everything changed was heavy with tension. Elena had spent the day finalizing her plan to leave Liam. She had arranged for Alex to stay with her closest friend, someone she trusted implicitly, while she figured out her next steps. She packed a small bag with essentials, careful not to arouse suspicion, and waited for the right moment. Liam had been distant all day, his mood unreadable but dangerous. Elena's instincts screamed that something was coming, but she couldn't predict how quickly it would unfold. Rain began to fall in the early evening, casting a gloomy backdrop over the events to come. Liam came home later than usual, his mood darkened by alcohol. Elena could smell the whiskey on his breath as soon as he walked in. He didn't speak at first, simply staring at her in a way that made her skin crawl. She busied herself in the kitchen, trying to maintain a facade of normalcy, but the silence between them was suffocating. Finally, Liam broke the quiet, launching into accusations about her loyalty and the state of their family. His words were laced with venom, and Elena knew better than to engage. She kept her responses short and neutral, hoping to de-escalate the situation. But Liam wasn't interested in calming down. He wanted control, and her refusal to give in only fueled his anger. As the rain intensified outside, so did the storm inside their home. Liam began pacing, his voice growing louder with each step. He brought up Eric, accusing Elena of betraying him, of destroying everything they had built together. Elena felt her heart race as he edged closer, his gestures becoming more aggressive. When he slammed his fist on the table, she flinched, realizing just how dangerous the situation had become. Elena knew she had to protect herself. She slowly backed away, trying to create distance between them. Liam, however, wouldn't let her go. He grabbed her arm, his grip firm and unrelenting. Panic surged through her as she struggled to break free, but Liam's strength overpowered her. In her desperation, she reached for the nearest object, a heavy ceramic vase on the counter. Without thinking, she swung the vase, hitting Liam across the side of his head. He stumbled backward, clutching his temple, but the blow only seemed to enrage him further. He lunged at her, and they both fell to the floor, grappling in a chaotic struggle. Elena's survival instincts took over, and she pushed him with all her strength. Liam staggered, losing his balance. He fell backward, his head striking the sharp edge of the coffee table with a sickening thud. For a moment the room fell silent except for the sound of the rain pounding against the windows. Elena scrambled to her feet, her hands trembling as she realized Liam wasn't moving. She called his name, her voice shaky and filled with dread, but he didn't respond. Blood pooled beneath his head, and Elena's stomach churned as the reality of what had happened sank in. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911, barely able to form coherent sentences as she explained what had happened. When the police arrived, Elena was sitting on the floor next to Liam's lifeless body, her face streaked with tears. She confessed everything, from the abuse to the events of that night, her words tumbling out in a torrent of fear and guilt. The officers listened, their faces grim as they took in the scene. Elena was handcuffed and led away, the flashing red and blue lights illuminating the rain-soaked street. Neighbors peeked out from their windows, their once idyllic view of Elena's life now shattered. As she sat in the back of the police car, her mind raced with the weight of what she had done and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. The aftermath of that night unraveled Elena Harper's life in ways she couldn't have imagined. The days following her arrest were a blur of interrogations, court hearings, and media scrutiny. News of Liam Dawson's death spread quickly, turning their quiet suburban street into a spectacle. Reporters swarmed Greenhaven, eager to dig into the story of the woman who killed the father figure of her son. For those who had once admired Elena's seemingly perfect life, the revelation of her struggles was both shocking and unnerving. Elena was charged with manslaughter, and her trial became a media sensation. The courtroom was packed with spectators, some sympathetic to her plight and others eager to vilify her. The prosecution painted a picture of a manipulative woman who had orchestrated her partner's death to reunite with her ex. They brought up her secret meetings with Eric Montgomery as evidence of her duplicity, arguing that she had pushed Liam to his breaking point and then lashed out when he confronted her. But the defense told a very different story. They highlighted Liam's abusive behavior, presenting testimony from friends and neighbors who had witnessed signs of trouble in their relationship. Elena's lawyer described a woman trapped in a cycle of control and fear, her every action driven by the need to protect herself and her son. The jury heard about Liam's escalating violence, his monitoring of Elena's movements, and his refusal to allow Alex any connection to his biological father. One of the most powerful moments of the trial came when Eric testified. He spoke about the threats Liam had made and the fear in Elena's voice during their last conversation. Eric's testimony provided crucial context, illustrating just how desperate Elena had become in her attempts to shield Alex from harm. His words, combined with the evidence of Liam's controlling behavior, helped shift the narrative in Elena's favor. Throughout the trial, Elena remained composed, though her face betrayed the weight of her guilt and regret. She didn't deny what she had done but insisted that she had acted in self-defense. The jury was tasked with untangling the complicated web of events leading up to Liam's death, weighing the fear and abuse Elena endured against the final, fatal act of violence. After weeks of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Elena was found guilty of manslaughter rather than murder, a decision that acknowledged the mitigating circumstances of her actions. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 3. Life in prison was a stark contrast to the world Elena had known, but it gave her time to reflect and heal. She participated in therapy sessions, confronting the trauma of her past and the choices she had made. Her love for Alex became her guiding light, motivating her to rebuild herself for the day they could be together again. Eric stepped in as a caregiver for Alex during Elena's incarceration, providing him with stability and a sense of connection to his biological family. Though the arrangement was unconventional, it allowed Alex to grow up in a safer, healthier environment. Eric made sure Alex understood that his mother's actions, while tragic, were rooted in her love and determination to protect him. When Elena was released after serving 3 years, she returned to a world that had changed, but her priorities remained the same. She reunited with Alex, vowing to create a life free from fear and filled with honesty and love. Though the scars of the past would never fully fade, Elena resolved to move forward, using her story as a testament to resilience and the strength it takes to break free from the chains of abuse.